we're back with more ways to get your players to do the GM prep for you. Hi everybody, Bobby here for the GM table, and yeah, we're in part 2 of our series of questions based on my newest world building list that I use. And no, this isn't me plugging, hey, buy this PDF. This is something I used for a stream. At this point, we're well into, but when we did session 0, I made this list. Now, if you're curious where I got the idea for this list, why I use this list, that's all in episode 1, as well as how to use these questions to make a map and to add rumors and facts into your world. We already covered that last week. This week, we're covering the people, aka races of the world, as well as getting them to make your threats and monsters that will be showing up at least early game in your campaign. So the first set of questions, little bit of a primer. How this works is you go around the table and you ask each player one question. You ask player A question 1, they answer. You then go to player B with question 2. They answer. Every player gets to give their answer. Obviously, someone's out to troll the group, ruin everybody's fun. You do have to police that a little bit. But really, for the most part, as long as you have a group of players you trust, this works really well. We're going to have some questions where everyone gets asked the same question and everyone's answers are true because they're kind of open-ended and they get to add multiple things. But starting off, races. Now, in my list, we have elves, dwarves, gnomes, automatons, and half-demons. Whatever your race is, you want halflings, boom, you got halflings. We have gnomes because this is working in a book that's not out yet, and halflings get really murky with copyright thanks to Wizards of the Coast, mainly thanks to TSR's copyright, but you know, that kind of stuff. Don't want half folks, so we just did gnomes. If you want tieflings, if you want warforged, which are half demons and automatons, let's be real honest. You want Goliath, any of the D&D races, any fantasy race at all. You just add this exact same question, swap out a race name. What it is you go around the table, you ask one person, what does everyone know about elves? And this can be, what does everyone know about elves that is true? Or what does everyone think they know about elves? Which is a misconception, or a trope, or a stereotype. They get to add it from the perspective of their character, from the perspective of the player. I will say, if it's someone, say, it's a player who has a dwarf who gets the question about elves, and they answer it, you then get to go to the player who's the elf, if you have an elf in the party, and go, is that true? And if maybe there's 2 elves, and one says it's true, and one says it isn't, you go, well, it's true to some elves. Really, really simple. But you continue around, what does everyone know about dwarves? What does everyone know about gnomes, about automatons, about half-demons? They get to fill in the fluff of your world. And by doing this with the races, now if you really want to massage this and really sink in, you kind of rig the questions so the one player who's playing an elf answers the elf question, the player who's playing the dwarf answers the dwarf question. If you have multiple, it can get more complicated, but you have one pick, and again, you confirm with other players who are the race that this is, and it can be, yes, it's true, no, it's not true, or maybe it's true for some and not for others. The group as a whole gets to decide. They just did so much of the world building for you. Done. Right away. We now have all the baseline stuff we need for the fluff for our races, which is going to help inform the rest of the world. Last week, we covered names of villages, rivers, stuff like that, but they're just the names, not how things work and interact. That kind of stuff we're going to cover in week 3, where we get into government and politics and all those noodly bits. The only other thing we're covering this week is threats. These are ones I love. There's actually 2 questions here. Each question you ask everyone. The first is, what is a commonly known monster, and what is something everyone knows about that monster? That's one question. Because here's the thing. A player can easily go, trolls are weak to fire, and now we don't have to worry about the metagaming of, do people automatically know trolls are weak to fire? If nobody picked it, you go, you guys had, what, 5, 6, however many players you have, options to pick that. You could have made that common knowledge, you didn't. You can also go, trolls are actually healed by fire. And yes, if you're playing hard and locked into the raw of a game like Dungeons & Dragons, you go, well, that's not what the stat block says. Okay, well, we're already making our own homebrew setting here. So we go to the troll. We remove that weakness, maybe give them a different weakness. Maybe if they're healed by fire, they're harmed by cold. And you give them some kind of healing ability based on fire. Your players already said they want this in the world. So do it. And they're already informed ahead of time, so it's not sneaky. It's not getting one over on them, because this is just a quirk of your world. But with this, again, my list assumes 5 players. So if 5 players are all answering this, you now have 5 monster types you know your world has. If you're lucky, you'll get goblins and kobolds and stuff. But even then, if they only care about Medusa, if they care about Cyclops and there's only one of them, if they care about the Minotaur and he still lives in the labyrinth, stuff like that, that's going to tell you the type of adventures they want, the type of monsters they want to encounter. So we now have this list, and you don't have to take extra notes. Just write the answers onto the form where all the lists are, and then go back and get creative with your ideas later, away from the table. Just jot down. It's like 10, 15 minutes of brainstorming based on these, maybe once a week. Pull from this. This is going to be your master list of ideas that your players gave you. Now, the second question of this is actually the one I love. I'm saying that about a lot of these questions, so I guess it's another one I love. It's, what is the name of a villainous NPC? That's it. Just their name. Now, when I ran it, I then basically went into like, what kind of race are they? So I have an idea. But you don't have to ask them that. You just be, what's their name? These are NPCs that are so villainous, they've already heard about them. They're the big movers and shakers in the world. But I then went, oh, that sounds kind of like a gnomish name. Is that a gnome? Oh, that's an interesting name. What kind of race is that? Oh, it's a fae. Cool. We have a fae villain. These are literal examples from my session 0. They're giving me the ammo. Now, they don't have all the details for the villain, but they're giving me jumping off points to start brainstorming. And I can get really creative with those villains, but as long as I stay true to the info they give me, as much as I created the villain, when that villain shows up, the player's going to feel like they made the villain. And they did. They made part of the villain. And it's going to have this situation. I love it in session 1 of this game that I'm referring to where I use this. I already introduced one of the villains they had. And the players loved it. They were laughing. They were cheering. But at the same time, the player who named the villain is apologizing left and right because they felt their decision brought this villain here. But the thing is, it could have been any villain. At the end of the day, since I didn't make the adventure till after they did this, it could have been any villain. It could have been a villain anyone made. If I didn't do this method, it would have been a villain I made. But they feel connected to the results of this. This villain showed up, and it's a villain they came up with. So they're now invested with this villain existing in the world. Both in defeating them, because, you know, a little bit of feeling responsible if the villain does anything to the rest of the party, as well as maybe wanting to beat them, but not destroy them, depending on your player's personality. Because, you know, they made them. They don't want that villain gone forever. They just have to beat them. So that's it for this week. It's a shorter video, but I really love this concept. We have one more week of this new style of video. I hope it does well. I hope you guys enjoy it. If you do, comment down below. If you're interested in the game I've been talking about, this game that used these questions is Heroic Journeys. That's Saturdays at 9 p.m. over on our Twitch channel. But we also have a game on Tuesdays at 8. That is Tales from 2000. That's a modern horror game that used some of these similar things, actually with like the kids on bikes type questions, so it doesn't use the kids on bikes rules. Anyways, I'll catch you guys next week. Name a magical or supernatural place or realm.
Think High Harvest, which is a place on in this realm, is where the Fae live.
What is the name of a villainous NPC within this list? What race is Star Solar or monster?
Could he be a Fae?
Yeah, 100% could be a Fae. A lot of this seems Fae. You realize 2 things. You've teleported. You're now in High Harvest. You're in the manor of Sar Salor Norvani.
Oh no! I'm sorry!